I'm Stila Webb.
And I'm Shuom and Stila.
I'm going to write my first fiction novel this year.
And I'm going to film it.
And we're going to release one video each week.
And if you keep up with Stila's word count, by the end of 2017, you'll have...
Do it! Make your dreams come true!
Alright, 10%ers. Today we're going to talk about the end of your book, also known as the resolution.
It comes after your climax, but you don't want to end your book right with the big climactic battle. You want some downtime.
You need some downtime. You need to wrap things up, give your characters a chance to process, figure out how this is all going to affect them for the rest of their lives.
It's a good 4 or 5 paragraphs that you really want to focus on at the end of your book.
4 or 5 paragraphs. The resolution is where you complete the actual story of your book. The climax is the end of the plot line. That's the end of all of the big events. The events are over. You're done with events. But your characters aren't done yet. There's still that wrap-up of your characters and what they're doing.
We figured it out from a great video we saw on YouTube, which will link down below, which talks about the difference between story and plot in Lord of the Rings. Because everyone kept saying the ending of Lord of the Rings was too long. But in this video, he points out that most people are just looking at the plot, which ends when the ring is destroyed. But the story continues on about what happens to the characters and how do they feel about their new situation. How do they continue?
Well, what is the ending of each of their individual stories? Right at the end of the actual events, where the ring goes into the mountain, there's still stuff hanging. What happens to Aragorn? What is Gimli going to do with the rest of his life?
What's
is
he gonna
Sam
wear?
going to go back and get that, what's he going to do with the rest of his life? How is Frodo going to handle the rest of his life? What is he going to do? They go back to the Shire, then what happens? How do they handle the fact that their entire lives have changed at this point? That is all actual information about the character. There's something written up there.
You want to make sure that you, at the end of your big action sequence, when the plot is wrapped up and the MacGuffin is found, then after that you have a new chapter and have 4 to 6 paragraphs of just come down with the story resolving.
That's how his first book ends.
Spoiler
There's like
alert.
this much resolution. You're like, ah, poof, boom. That's it. That's all. There's nothing like the, ah, okay.
Yeah, because I wanted to end with people's hearts beating and hearts thumping. I didn't want it to be like a long drawn out thing like Lord of the Rings. So
There's a happy medium between going too far. Well, the reason Lord of the Rings was so long is A, there was so much story there, and B, it involved so many people who went in disparate directions at the end of it.
Okay.
Pipper, no clawing.
Right. Don't get distracted. Alright, moving on.
No, there's a happy medium between those two. You don't have to have it just, oh, and happily ever after, poof. Like, you need some sort of epilogue, some sort of breather. It's much like any other point in your book. After a big high, you want to bring people down and have that emotional satisfaction of seeing everybody for just a few more minutes, spending a little bit more time wrapping up the end of their personal stories. Then you can put the book down and be done with it. Otherwise, it's not satisfying.
Yeah, so I didn't want to linger too long in that. Everyone kept saying my resolution was too short, but I like it.
Yeah, it was a little too short. You could have just a little bit longer.
I
Seriously, 3 more pages would have been fine.
3 more? God, what would they have done for 3 more pages? Yeah, so this is something beta readers can tell you, but the main thing is to make sure you absolutely end the book on a cliffhanger. If it's all possible, move your climax into the second book. Make it the first chapter
Oh
of the
my
second
god,
book.
do that and I will come to your house and I will hit you in the face with a dead fish. So we've talked about that before too. Don't do this cliffhanger. You want your ending of your book to actually have an ending. You need to complete the plot line of your book. The plot line itself has to come to an end. Your characters have to have their story has to that part of their story needs to finish. You can set it up for a sequel, that's fine. That plot line can come down and your resolution can be, uh-oh, what kind of crap did that get me in? That's okay. You can do that, but don't make it a cliffhanger. Just don't. Just don't.
Yeah, cliffhangers are...
It's a gimmick.
They're done by first-time authors on their free first book in a series to make you buy the second book, and it's not... You're making a promise when you write a book that I'm going to set up a situation, that has irony that the main characters have to overcome, and by the end of the book, they should have overcome that situation.
Yeah.
Whether it sets them up for future adventures is fine, but the individual situation that you promised at the beginning of the book, that the cover of the book promises, should be resolved.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just feel cheap and dirty.
Yeah, it's a bad technique, so don't do cliffhangers.
Yeah, don't fall into that trap. Don't.
But if you want people to buy your second book, what do you do?
You make the first one really interesting and you make it free.
No. More than that, you end with the promise of more adventures.
Well, yes.
So this is something that I tend to do. If you want, this is for happy books. If your character becomes like an armored knight of a Starship Trooper at the end of the book, it should hint that they're going to go on more Starship Trooper type adventures. It's not like, when we say resolve the whole story, no cliffhangers, at the end of your first book, you don't want the character to be like, well, that was a fun adventure, let me hang up my sword, I'll never do that again. That's all I'm going to do with that adventure. No, you want to have the promise of more adventures to come.
The Return of the Kings does the opposite of that. It clearly states Frodo is done. Like, Sam is done. There's no more going out and killing big bad guys. That is the end of their adventure.
Again, that's a melancholy ending. It's not like the ending of
And it wasn't a fun adventure.
yeah, it's not like the ending of like Bad Boys, right? The ending,
Yeah.
So again, if you're trying to make a movie like a summer blockbuster type of movie, or if you're trying to make a summer blockbuster type of book, something with a happy, uplifting ending, end
Yes.
with the hint of more adventures. They finish their arc, then something comes at the very end and be like, oh my god, boys, you're not going to believe this, and then boom, you go to the second adventure.
This is 3748. You know, oh, there's a robbery in progress. They look at each other and they go, woo! Freeze frame, smash cut, guitar riff.
Yeah, even if you never write the second book, even if you're writing a standalone, like Infinity Squad 1 was just a standalone, I never planned to write a sequel, but you end with the hint of more adventure to give the reader a sense that the story will continue when the book closes.
Right, their lives go on. There are other things they're going to do that are interesting. It gives you imaginational fodder for, gee, I wonder what they're going to do next. Oh, that was so good. Oh, I hope they get to do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know.
It makes you believe the characters are living and breathing and continuing on.
So to reiterate, for your resolution, make sure that you understand that the story of your characters is a little bit separate from the plot line of events that you have going through the story. The plot is just the events. Those are the things that happen. The story is how your character handles it, the decisions they make, and the emotions they have while on that journey. The other thing to remember is the Save the Cat beats. The resolution is what we call the final image. It should mirror your opening image. So if you remember at the very beginning we did Save the Cat called, and we plotted out the book, there's that opening image. This is the state the characters are in at the very beginning. This is where they start their adventure, and then the final image should be a mirror of it, to show how things have changed. And in mine, we started with the twins are together, they're happy, they're going about their daily business. The final image is going to be Brea is alone. There's no Bella. And everything has changed. So it's a mirror image that you want to establish.
Yeah, no, it's just a satisfying way to put symmetry in your book. If you imagine a book where the main character is a heroine, she's alone at the beginning, she's got like a good job, but she's alone, she doesn't have a man, and in the end, the final image is like her, you know, playing golf or something like that. It'd be
weird.
It'd be weird. Or the final image is like a sweeping shot of a skyscraper with the sun behind it. Like you're like, wait, what? Why would that be?
Yeah.
The final image either has to be her together with the new man or the family, or her alone on like a golf course being, I never needed a man in the first place, and she hits the golf ball. Those are the two choices for the final image. It can either be a good ending or a happy ending. There doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be always the most predictable thing.
Yeah. It needs to be either opposites or the same.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to, you know, if you start like a Western with a guy riding out of the sunrise into town, and you reverse it and you have him riding into the sunset out of town, those are basically the same shot.
Yeah.
So it's just him, he's in the same place.
It's like poetry, it'll rhyme.
Right.
But you can also end it with the sun setting on his grave because he got killed in the shootout.
Right.
Right? But you want it to have some sort of reflection of the first person.
Or the classic, he's kissing a girl against a sunset.
Yeah.
Also totally okay, but you just want to make sure that you've got those bookends.
Yeah, and so when Blake Snyder says final image, it's not literally the last sentence in the book. It's like the last 4 to 6 paragraphs, like the scene and the
Right.
the mood.
It's
you
the
know.
final moments.
Yeah.
Just like you have the opening moments, you have the final moments.
I mean, it could be something as simple as the main character opening up a shoebox and like seeing something inside it. You know, what in the beginning, if they opened up a shoebox and or they didn't want to look at the shoebox, they were scared.
Yeah.
And the end of the like the thing in Up where he opens up the book and like there's a picture of his wife saying, "You were my adventure all along."
Yeah. You want that symmetry.
During the editing process, we're going to go through and look for plot threads and make sure you've tied them all up. You don't want to jam everything in here.
No.
You can tie plot threads up in different ways. And speaking of that, another big tip is, if you guys are following along with the word count, you should be close to the end of the book by now. So once you finish your book one week, don't go right into editing the next week.
You want to take a break. Some people do just like a week, some people do 2 weeks, some people do a month, some 6 months, but you kind of want to take a break. You want to just give yourself some time to decompress, to just let that project sit for a little while. A, you come back to it with fresh eyes. B, it just helps your mind refresh itself.
Because when you're editing, you're looking at it from the point of view of a reader. So when you're writing, you're deep in the story, you know all these little nuances and things like that, and these little in-jokes and things you have thought you've implied. But when you're editing, you have to come with fresh eyes and say, how would a reader view this? Is this interesting for a
You
reader?
have to try. It's not always that easy.
So the 2 weeks give you kind of like a mental reboot and let you kind of forget some stuff. So when you read it, you can remember it again and edit it. So in that vein, we're going to take a break between the videos we're creating every week to give Stila some time to finish her book and give us some time to come back with fresh eyes and do some really good in-depth editing videos. So this will be our last video for about 4 weeks.
2 weeks.
So in about 4 weeks,
2 weeks.
you're going to see a new video about editing, and Stila's going to be done with her book. And so we'll come back in 4 weeks, and we're going to start deep dive editing. We'll show you how it is in the first draft. We'll show you what to do in each pass of editing. Because sometimes you're looking for character arcs. Sometimes you're looking for how to combine scenes and make them carry more weight. The very last one is what people think of as editing, which is...
We're not doing this right now. That's the first video of editing.
spell checking and like checking individual words. So we're going to show you, we'll go deep into the detailed process of editing. So come back in about 4 weeks. Enjoy your summer.
We'll be back August 7th will be our next video.
Plus 2 weeks.
August 7th.
Learn how to play the cello.
Go to the beach, fly a kite, have a martini.
Yeah.
If you're following along with us and you're in this year 2017, we're going to be gone for 2 weeks. If, however, you're coming to this later, take a month off yourself. Give yourself a month. Work on a different project. Start beating out your next project. But get
Cello.
this one off your mind for a little while. And if you're following along with us and you haven't caught up with us, keep writing.
Dot Wang. So I'm gonna go off the screen this way. Whew. Ah. It's a long way around.
What are we doing?
I just ran around the whole world and came back to
What?
Tell us.
That joke is never working.